Hello, I'm Shannon Torrance, and this is Magic is Real. In today's episode, I interviewed Tricia Barker. Tricia is a psychic medium. She's a near-death experiencer, and she's the author of one of my favorite near-death experience-themed memoirs, Angels in the OR. Tricia has so much profound and beautiful insight to share about how when we're connected with our spiritual selves and our soul's purpose, we can be of such great service to those here in the earthly plane and to ourselves. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please like, subscribe, share with like-minded friends, and hit the bell notification to be alerted when new videos are up. And now I'm pleased to introduce Tricia Barker. Hello, this is Shannon Torrance, and this is Magic is Real. Thank you so much for watching today. I have a really interesting, fascinating, wonderful guest today who I have known about for some time. And I came across her actually on YouTube. I am a binger of near-death experiences and was really moved by Tricia, had spoken with a friend about her. And I thought, that was actually part of the inspiration for starting this, was really wanting to delve more into the spiritual world, in addition to being a developing medium myself. But today I'm so honored and so thrilled that we have Tricia Barker here today. She is a medium herself. She is a near-death experiencer, and she is the author of Angels in the OR. And this is a book that I just read. I don't know why I didn't read it sooner. And I have to say, I can highly recommend it. Pick it up right now. I listened to it on Audible. And as a voice actor, I also want to say the voice actor who read the book, perfectly done. Everything about it was wonderful. So Tricia, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to speak with you about your book and your experiences.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be on your program. And I was actually really pleased with my Audible speaker as well. She's amazing, and she lives up north. She has 8 kids and lives on a farm, and her dad built her a sound booth. And so that's what she does part-time. But she had a spiritual experience with her father. So she spent a lot of time trying to make the book sacred, as she read it.
She did a good job. She was so subtle. It's just it felt like your voice. It really felt like it was very personal. So I loved it. And the book obviously is about your experiences. And normally when I do these interviews, my first question is always, how did you become a medium, starting as far back as you can remember? And what sort of informed the person that you are today and where you are today? So you can kind of start wherever you like. But there's so much to cover that you can kind of start anywhere.
Yeah, well, that's a great place to start, actually. The near-death experience changed everything about how I viewed reality. So I called it lifted the veil, and I was able to pick up on ghosts years later. I certainly, just could tell when someone was close to death. I would see the light in their eyes. And I have to say, I'd almost get a little excited because I remembered what that light was like. I remembered what it was like floating out there. But the medium experience developed more so when my dad died about 10 years ago. And I went to various mediums, and I just realized that I could communicate with my own father more clearly than people who were communicating with him. And I think that's one of my missions, is like, when I give medium readings, I want people to hear their loved ones. I want their own intuition to come on, because you have so many signs and symbols from your loved ones. It makes so much more sense that you'd hear them in a way that makes sense to you. But it was really, I started doing medium readings only for parents who'd lost kids, and I did it, for free, just to see if I could do it. And the healing was so profound. These moments where the loss was so intense, and to get confirmation of certain details that eased a mom's worry about, was an accident her fault? Was it, and, to get that confirmation that it was not her fault, and that, her son completely was at peace and happy and waiting for her. I saw that these readings offer deep healing. And so that's why I started doing them. But really, it was the near-death experience that changed me from a party girl, an agnostic, college student who really didn't care about anything other than being successful, going to law school, and traveling the world. That was about it. And then suddenly my whole world was completely changed.
That's what I loved so much about the book is that it does you do describe your near death experience and what happened there, but that's in the beginning of the book, and the rest of the book is really a story of a woman's journey going through from that person that you were, and I was that person too, dealing with our low self-esteem and our, very, I know that you're a trauma survivor as well. And what I loved so much is it's so relatable because it's not just about the near death experience. It's about how you took that experience and um, how what it taught you and how it helped you learn to love yourself, especially by being of service to others. And so I would love to talk about how this all came about. I still want people to read your book, but I'd love to hear, your story from your mouth, and to sort of explain to people what did happen to you.
So I have a big place in my heart for young people, and a young person's near death experience is going to be vastly different than an older person's near death experience. I mean, if I had one right now at this time in my life, I'm more successful, more grounded, I've been through a lot of stuff. So as a young person, though, you're processing trauma from your childhood, you're processing trauma from just trying to make it in the world as a woman in my case. And that there's a lot of people who have that similarity with me, and they felt very down about themselves because they didn't have this near death experience that changed everything. They still had to grow spiritually because they were young. They still
Mhm.
had to grow emotionally, and there's a ton of people who've had massive spiritual awakenings, and that's really what I want to talk about as much as the near death experience. The near death experience is profound.
Yeah.
I won't deny it, but it is a little different in that I was 22.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'll start. I'll briefly tell the story. I won't go into too many
Yeah.
details,
Yeah.
but I know that people love the energy of these stories, that they really transport people and give them more peace about
Yeah.
dying. So I was afraid to die before this experience happened. I thought that would be, you know, the end. Like I just thought, maybe our energy dissipates into the trees and grass, and that's about it. I didn't think that this was a spiritual reality, but I had a car wreck on my way to run the Austin 10K. And on the way there, I was pretty much in a head on collision, broke my back in three places, had a ton of internal injuries that they really didn't even address too much. And I don't really know what happened, but the seatbelt, cut into my stomach. And I was in the hospital for 17 hours waiting for surgery because I didn't have health insurance. And that really became a big issue for me. I want people to have healthcare coverage. I was treated without health insurance, but the first doctor denied me. I overheard nurses talking and he didn't want to come in and operate. And so that really stuck with me that there are people who probably die waiting for surgeries, or people who end up paralyzed. And in my case, I lost feeling in my leg and I was a runner. And I just thought, this is horrible. I might be in a wheelchair. And all that I could think about was the physical. So my grades, I was a senior in college. Am I going to, everything, just physical and material was all I thought about. Then I went into surgery, and I don't know how long I'd been in surgery, but I know they had opened up my back. I lifted up out of my body, and it was the most thrilling thing that has ever happened because I saw my body there, and then I realized that my consciousness was intact and it was more real than this reality. That's how I talk about it. So when people say, well, that could have been a dream, or is it like a drug experience? No, to me, it is a highly elevated consciousness that takes in a whole lot more information than we're able to process with our human brains and with our human eyes. Because you see the room in a 360-degree vision, and you are looking at everything, and your spirit is learning at astronomical rates outside of the body. But at first I was just excited. The next thing that I saw were two angels, and I call them angels light beings is probably a more accurate term, but they shocked me. This was not something I had thought about. I thought, like people who talk about angels and fairies are just weird. Like I thought all the metaphysical stuff, the yoga and meditation, all that. I was like, whatever, to all of it. So when I saw these angels, though, the thing that hit me is they were highly intelligent and they were healers. And they were working through these neurosurgeons. So, as smart as these neurosurgeons were, they were assisted by a higher intelligence that told me I'd walk, I'd run, I'd live a normal life. But they were playful too, which was really strange. Like there's this sense of healing energy, playfulness, and intelligence. And when the monitor stopped, that's when I no longer wanted to look at my body. There's a lot of near death experiencers who I've interviewed, and one really cracked me up when she saw how mangled her body was. She was like, I don't know if I ever want to go back to that one. Maybe I'll just come back and get a new one. Like there's this sense of total disconnection from the body. So there's my body. I just think boring. There's other things to see out there. So I have a verifiable detail, which people love these details in near death experiencers, researchers especially. So that's where my story's been covered a lot by a lot of major outlets. But I saw my stepdad get a candy bar, and then later that was verified. But to me, I don't need any verification. I have this experience of knowing what it's like to be there. To me, the best parts of the near death experience was the freedom and the love. So both of these things combined are amazing. To be able to fly and just feel nothing but love for every person you've ever crossed paths with is just an amazing feeling. So, at the end of my life, I'll remember this interview. I'll remember all the people that I've ever connected with and just be grateful, just grateful for this moment in time. And I think that's what the soul's core feeling is just love for life. And we forget it. But at that soul level, I was just grateful to have been here, grateful to have experienced everything that I did. And I felt no sorrow, no darkness, no pain, just freedom. As I got further away into the stars, I began to feel like a higher intelligence coming toward me, a light, something that was giving me messages like love is all that matters, be like a little child, remind them to go to nature. And I remember thinking these messages are pretty simple. And I was like, can you give me something a little more profound here? I mean, if this is what I have to tell humanity. And yet at the same time, the energy of it was deep. There was something more to it than just the words. And as I transitioned, out of this place, I saw a little bit of a life review, not a long one, but what touched me the most and what I knew I had to do differently was not judge people by their outward appearance or their wealth or their intellect or any of that, to look at people's hearts. That the heart is the most important thing. The heart and the soul of people is what we're here for. Like that is the real connection. So I saw how I had not been friends with people who were not at my same college, and this really hurt me that I've been so cold in a way, or just nonchalant to people who prayed for me, who actually cared about me. And so I learned a lesson there. I was like, okay, I will meet people at the heart level, I will meet them at the soul level from this point forward. And then I transitioned into this, what I call kind of a holding place, but many people would picture it like heaven. Everything was perfect. So if you think, I love the quote, there is no sorrow on earth that heaven can't heal. And that's what that place felt like to me. There was nothing but green grass and beauty and perfection, and everything was made perfect, including my grandfather who was over there. He just looked young, and his face was shining with beauty and youth and joy and happiness. And he'd always had an interesting connection with me. I think a lot of grandparents try to be guides to their grandchildren. There's this sense of spiritual guidance or love. And I just got the sense he was meant to show me unconditional love and peace in that moment. And he asked me if I wanted to go on. And I knew that go on meant get closer to God. And I call the light God, but I didn't see a figure of God. Sometimes people see religious figures, but most of the time they see a light. And this light was an energy to me that changed everything. So any broken part of myself, any love that I didn't receive as a child or any abuse, it all just seemed to wash away as if it didn't matter, it didn't exist, that I was loved perfectly as I am, that everyone is, that all we need to do is remember that we're so deeply loved and so deeply and unconditionally seen and cared for. And that changed everything. It was powerful too. It wasn't just like light love. It was like, a blast of love that changed everything. And as I got closer and closer, I did not want to come back. And at that point, I was like, oh, this feels so good. Why would I ever want to go back here to this place and deal with the lack of that love? And so a lot of near death experiencers, we sound like we're suicidal. We're not. We miss the perfection. We miss the absolute perfection of that feeling. And there's nothing like it. And so as I got closer, I was stopped and I was shown that I was going to come back and work as a teacher. And that's the one time I actually argued with God. So some of my friends say that I was thrown out of heaven, and I kind of was, because at that point, I was given a literal mission. A lot of people walk through life going, what's my mission? But I had one and I didn't want it. I was like, I don't want to do that. I know what teachers make. I know what they have to go through. They don't get any respect. This is horrible. And so God just kind of threw me back in my body. And we can talk about this, but I'm so glad I was given that mission. It was the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
That's wonderful. That's actually so much of what your book is. And without giving anything away, it's the stories about how many lives you were able to affect and to see through to people, because we do. I ask every day, the more spiritual I've become, I actually pray, please let me let go of judgment, because it's so easy to look at other people and just judge their circumstances or judge what kind of person they are. Or there's so many of your students. I just got super spirit tingles right then, but it's like you can look at people and do that so often. And the thing is that you were able, I think, because you were so awakened to this of being able to see people for who they are, which is a fellow soul, an equal, that allowed you to have the gift of being able to touch students in a way that others hadn't. They might have been overlooked, or they'd say, oh, that kid's a troublemaker, that kid's on drugs, kick him out. But you were able to look at them and connect with them and meet them where they were, and just see them and say, hey, what's going on here? And that's, it would be great if we could all do that every day, instead of the anger that we feel, or like we get pissed at someone because they give us the finger on the street or whatever, in a car. And it's like, it would be so nice if we could go, hey, listen, I know that's not who you are. What's going on with you really? I mean, so I love that so much, that's not only did you have this experience that you can bring back and assure us that, hey, it's all good. The worst thing that can happen is that you die. It's worse to lose somebody and have to be here in grief. And that's not to minimize the pain of death. But the fact is, the worst thing that can happen is you die. And that's the best thing that can happen to you as a soul. And I
Yeah.
think that's so cool. And I remember Laurel and Jackson once said that life is just a big play. And afterwards, we all meet up backstage. And knowing that just makes everything so much easier now to go, oh, yeah, this is all just part of the Earth School stuff. So that's really interesting. And I actually, kind of going back to the mediumship stuff, because I I did want to know, I know that you came back with obviously a new perspective. And I know that you do mention also being able to sort of just know how people are feeling. But at what point did you realize that you actually, after this experience, could communicate with the other side, like you said, with your father, um, in a way that's direct?
Yeah. So it seemed natural for me to communicate with my own father and to believe that was real. But but I needed even verifiable details from him. So he would tell me to do certain things. And I looked at him like my actual father instead of my spiritual father. So I was like, I'm not doing that. And then when I didn't do it, it turned out just terrible. And I was like, okay, I'll listen to some guidance.
Yeah.
And so I started listening to more of his guidance and then found a different balance with it. But it really didn't, I didn't, and this was about 4 years ago, it didn't develop for other people because I wasn't even certain if I could. I would sometimes get messages for students in the classroom. And a lot of times they have grandparents who have died. So, I'd hear someone's grandparents saying, tell him that he needs to focus on, football more, or he needs to, or that she needs to open a bakery truck, or she, like, I get specific things and I wouldn't say it. I just ask them, hey, have you ever thought about doing this?
Mhm.
And kind of use that guidance. But it was really when I first started making YouTube videos and parents who'd lost kids came to me, I thought, okay, let me see if I can really do this, if I can go into meditation
Mhm.
and I was grateful for the calls that were complete cold calls. So they wouldn't say anything to talk with me about their spiritual experiences. They just would say, okay, I've lost a couple of people. Tell me,
Mhm.
what's going on. And it's tough, but it's also verification for me as a medium to go, okay, I really did just connect with their loved ones. And it wasn't me reading their faces or me, like
Mhm.
just picking up on anything. So there's a lot to it, and I'm sure I can still develop more as a medium. There were some experiences which were more overwhelming than others, where I felt like the spirit kind of came too deep inside of me, and I felt, too much of what they were going through. So I kind of like to keep them out here
Mhm.
and get them to talk to me or send me images. I don't like to embody, if that makes
Right.
sense, everything that they're going through, because that's you can feel the pain of how they died or some
Mhm.
of their own issues that they dealt with in life, and so that can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah. I've started to have that experience too, where it took me a long time, and now I actually ask them to make me feel that because just right now I feel like I need that extra validation, and it can be overwhelming. It Although I've said to them, if it gets to be too overwhelming, I will stop. I'm going to ask you not to do it anymore. But for right now, it actually helps me feel like I'm really in it with them, and just the stuff I've come up with. I have not been wrong yet based on the physical symptoms, which is so incredible and really interesting. When you I know that this was so long ago and you may not remember, but I know that when you first um came out of the near death experience and woke up and were back in the real world, um what were some of the things you noticed, or what were some of I guess the feelings you have, or that you noticed? What was different about you and the way that you saw the world around you?
The biggest difference, and when I try to imagine what it was like to be me before that near death experience, it felt like I was so encased in my body. Like I didn't get out of it at all, if that makes sense. And after the near death experience, I felt like my energy merges with the room. So I feel like I keep my aura at about 8 feet. Like, if
Mhm.
someone's in my vicinity, then, I just kind of feel their energy and I can't help it. It's just and so that changed so much. I felt like I was a part of people. And as a teacher, that worked really well because I could read the room well, and I could tell when someone was bored or someone was not paying attention or when they were struggling or going through something difficult. So I guess empathy, but it's more than empathy. I think that oneness experience that a lot of near death experiencers have just kind of allows us to feel, quote, one with everyone, which can be a little confusing at times. And
Yeah.
I talked with a recent near death experiencer, and I was overwhelmed in crowded areas or buses or places where people were really packed in tightly. I would just start knowing things, and more of that was psychic information. And I asked for a lot of that to be toned down because that's just too much information.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to know everything, about everyone on the bus.
Yeah.
That's not good information sometimes. And there's different realms that people take mediumship, which I have some friends who do, and I'm on the fence about it, but some psychic mediums help people find criminals and people who
Hmm.
have committed murder, and really kind of go into some deep stuff, and that's heavy work on some level, but it's
Yeah.
also probably important work. So there was a little hint of some of that, when early on I could sense when someone had done something, like perhaps inappropriate,
Yeah.
and that was heavy information. So I've learned, to keep a lot of that out, to kind of
Yeah.
focus on myself and protect my own energy. But I didn't know how at first. And I think when you first have an experience like that, you're so blown open. Those first couple of years afterwards are really probably the most heightened.
Yeah, it's like you're one big walking raw nerve, I imagine. And what are your tricks for setting boundaries and putting that bubble around yourself so that you don't absorb everybody else's stuff?
Yeah, so I just wake up, and if I take a shower in the morning, I just imagine like energy just kind of washing away the night's energy or whatever. And then same thing before I go to bed. If I don't take a shower at bedtime, I just meditate for a few moments before bed if I don't have time for a long meditation, and really just kind of center my energy with that love of God, because I feel like that divine love of God is the ultimate um, healer of everything
Yeah.
and protector of energy. But meditation is great too. I always tell people who are longing for a deeper spiritual experience, don't give up on meditation. Like, stick with it, because I think lucid dreaming and out of body experiences and all these, exciting things that people want to do, you can't do them. You
Yeah.
just have to have a meditation practice for maybe 6 months, two
Right.
years, 5 years, and a consistent one.
It's so true. Yeah, when I first started meditating, this is when I started to know that this was real stuff. It's just, and I remember I was lying in bed just with the meditation music, binaural beats. That's what it was. And all of a sudden I jumped up and grabbed my boyfriend. I'm like, he's like, what's wrong? I said, I was just somewhere. I was somewhere else. I just went somewhere else. It was as clear as I'm seeing you right now that I was in this snowy woods looking through a window and there were these street lamps. And it was almost like as soon as I popped in there, I popped back because I was so startled that I was like, I'm standing in the snow right now. It was the coolest thing. And it's a really cool trick that I haven't been able to replicate since. But these experiences, like you said, it lifts the veil for a second and makes you realize that you aren't confined to this body. And it's those experiences that validate that, okay, there's something else going on, which is also why I love hearing near death experiences because it's such a good reminder. And with that in mind, like the reminder, and I would like to hear your perspective on what is the reason that we come here into these bodies.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Before I get to it, I do want to talk about meditation and what you
Please,
experience just a
please
little
do.
bit, 'cause
Please do.
it's funny, and it's something I've heard from a couple of different
Mm.
meditation teachers actually. But my meditation teacher, right after the near death experience, when I was still healing and still in the body cast, I went out to this home, and the people were just old hippies and they were so great. But the meditation teacher, he was talking about the first time he got out of body, he was outside of his window and a snowblower like pulled his spirit into the snowblower and threw him out. And he was
Wow.
so horrified that he like went back to his body really quickly. And I laughed because it really can be that jarring. You just get right outside of your door, or you just get right outside of your apartment complex, and there you are. And if you haven't done that before, it's like, whoa, this is weird. What am I doing? Where am I? And so there's that
So weird.
moment of panic, and that's normal, but it's the beginning of doing it more frequently.
Yeah, I felt like I was in a Robert Frost poem for a second, and I really felt like that snowy just that snowy stillness, and I didn't even know what I was seeing, but I knew I was elsewhere. Which and well, and actually I have a question about that from your perspective as well, because lately I found that I'm able to do remote viewing, and I know that that's not the same thing as being outside of your body, but how is that happening? Like, and I'll explain it just for anyone who doesn't know. I was reading this woman, I just do practice readings right now. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask your mom to take me through your house. I said, on the right, there's this is your bedroom. Here's a hallway. She said, exactly. And I just walked into that room and I said, This room is very cluttered, no judgment. This is the room where you put everything, you don't know where it belongs. She said, yep. And I said, there's a Raggedy Ann doll on the right hand side. I'm just seeing that. And she goes, do you want to see it? She takes me in with her computer. We're on Zoom. She walks me in. It's the most cluttered room. And she pans over, and there is a bunch of dolls with a Raggedy Ann doll sitting right there. And I was like, that is incredible. I blew my, that's one of those things where you have those moments of you're blown away. How are we doing that? How is that happening?
I know it's fascinating. I interviewed Carolyn Clapper, and she does a lot of that for people as well. She's so I've practiced with this, and I like to tell people, if you have a close friend or someone who's into this, do it for each other. Like just like practice with it, because I've done that with friends, and it's interesting. You can meet people in dreams and remember it, and you can also remote view, and it's a little bit different. But it's still kind of the same. It's like, I think people discredit this because that feels more like imagination. It's just
Mhm.
like you're getting pictures, you're getting information from that other realm, and or from your site that is larger than what's contained in your body. And that kind of information is interesting, and it's worth exploring, and it's worth doing more of. I think people need to play around with consciousness more and have fun with it, just like
Yeah,
the pandemic seemed like the perfect time to lucid dream and to
right.
go travel to places you haven't gone before. It makes total sense to me that near death experiencers feel like they become one with everything at some point in their experience. So we're tapping into little parts of consciousness that we're becoming one with, the person we're giving the reading to, or their home or their environment. And so it's just a moment where you're tapping into that oneness.
That is such a good way to describe it.
And I think it's going to inform us and teach us that the harm that we do to others, we truly are doing to ourselves. I think
Yeah.
that's the evolution of humanity, is to do no harm. That's what I took into the classroom. And I think everyone can take that into everything that they do. Do no harm to others, then work on healing yourself. Do no harm to yourself. Do no harm to anything, anywhere. And where you can see the light in others and remind them of their light and their potential, and give them that extra push to just shine, to just be themselves without judgment. But we can all shine. I don't understand competition. That's something that I've never understood as a near death experiencer. I'm like, you can be 100% and I can be 100%, and we can both just be 100%, awesome, and just shine. And your shine doesn't take away from my shine. It just adds more light to the world. And that's what I think we should remember. There's so much to your question about what is the purpose of coming here.
Yeah.
I think it's probably different for different souls, but a lot of times I know that I've had many past lives, so I think we come in with some themes.
Yeah.
We can't help but come in with them. And one of those themes might be, I want to be an artist, or I want to express myself, or I want to experience travel or freedom or love, or, there's all kind of different things that people want to do, but generally they want to express their individuality. And then they come up against a culture that limits them. And so it's a constant struggle between society and culture and your soul's desire to do what it's going to
Mhm.
do. And then there's challenges along the way. So really, I think coming here, we're trying to hang on to the memories that a lot of us get as near death experiencers. Love is all that matters. It's all that we take with us. So whether you write a book, or whether you produce a movie, or whether you do whatever it is you do, it's the love that is the only thing that's really important. And when I can get in a bad attitude about things, and the publishing industry, and get on my
Yeah.
topics, but I wrote it because I love writing, and I love people, and I want people to heal and have a deeper connection to spirit, and to experience their own healing in magical ways. And so that was my hope. And when you do something from a place of love, you really you're meeting your soul mission, whether it's composing music, being an engineer, if you're just passionate and on fire about something, that's important. But what I also learned, and I know you know this, service is so important. If
Mhm.
you're not doing something to help other people, you're probably going to be pretty self-consumed and miserable. Like I
Absolutely.
mean, it's just kind of the basic formula for life that people focus too much on themselves, but the
Mhm.
minute they see like who's all out there and what they're dealing with and how they're struggling, and you see that you're adding value to people's lives, it changes everything. It just elevates your whole existence.
That is so true. And I actually was speaking with you before, and something I haven't shared here, but I'm just sharing it now, is that I've gone through a 12-step recovery program. And when people ask me, people who are kind of going, well, how do I get out of this? Because there's so many people dealing with a lack of self love. And actually, I think the whole core of addiction all goes back to love addiction, which is my core issue. And I think every addiction has to do with that. It has to do with the lack of self-love and the lack of feeling whole and just searching for something outside of yourself to make you feel that God feeling that we're all looking for. That we're really missing, and not in the religious sense, but in the soul sense, is we're really missing God. And that's ourselves. We are all part of God. And so but I always say the top two things I can say, but after obviously writing out all your stuff and figuring out where it comes from and your traumas, and forgiveness, and looking at your part in things, is being of service to others. And self-care is my big one too. Loving yourself first, the oxygen mask, putting on your own oxygen mask first, but then being of service to others for exactly the reason that you just said. When you're caring for someone else, you're out of your own head.
Yeah, and I was inspired by my students so many times as well. They had struggles far beyond my own, and that began to help me heal some of my own wounds. So, yes, I have my own issues with my family and feel pretty ostracized by my family. There's loss, and then there's just relationships that will never perhaps be healed. But I saw one student whose entire family was murdered, so she was just alone in the world and trying to make it on her own, with no one, and struggling with all that loss. I mean, I just saw story after story, and they always inspired me. Their grit and their determination and their resilience. Really, I was amazed by it. But I think God sent me back to do that, not just for them, but for me too, because as I confronted bullies in junior high who were harming, one kid, and I taught them how to be better people, I realized, okay, well, I was bullied in junior high, and now I'm standing up for a kid who was like me, and I'm doing it with love and healing, and we're all, our consciousness is being elevated together. My
Right.
wounds are being healed as I help someone else. So it was, you know, that part kind of shocked me. I didn't realize how much healing I would receive just from being the authority figure and being able to do the things that maybe people didn't do for me or weren't doing in other
Right.
situations.
I love that you said that it's both of your consciousnesses consciousness working together, that it is symbiotic. It's not just, and I love how all of the people that we interact with are all part of that. And that's what's so amazing about what's going on the other side, is that things can be happening simultaneously, and you think, but how, by our paradigm, how could all these things be all these synchronicities be happening and affecting us all in the way that we need to be affected? And it's just one of those things where we can't put it in the box of how things are now. It's like, we can't say how our loved one can show us a butterfly to remind, how does that, means the butterfly has to be a willing participant, and everything has to sort of happen that way. But it's kind of, do you have any examples of that too, of those synchronicities that sort of tell us that our loved ones are there? It could be personal, or even just the types of
Yeah,
things that you see.
yeah. So, there's different levels of consciousness. Perhaps there's like the meditative consciousness and the lucid dreaming, and then the consciousness that you use when you do a reading. But one time I had maybe it was an out of body experience, but in meditation, I just shot up out of my body and I merged with a hawk. And this hawk was really excited to show me, what it did, and it went down and it caught a rodent. So I was flying with the hawk, just so fast toward the earth, saw it catch a mouse, and then it went off. And I told people in the meditation group, oh hey, I was up there flying around like a hawk, and they were just kind of looking at me like, well, this
Sure you
girl's
did.
weird. Yeah, sure. And I kind of went to the car and I was like, maybe I just have a vivid imagination sometimes. And as I got in my car, a hawk, and I've never seen one do this before. I hadn't started the engine yet. It came so close to my windshield, and it slowed down and it showed me its full wings, and it circled my car one more time and showed me its wings and then flew off. And it was just kind of like it tilted to me, and I was like, oh, I merged with that one. Like
Yeah.
that one's
Oh,
telling me hello.
that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. I did, I wondered if you'd be able to come up with one right away, but that's the thing. There are those moments that we remember that are like, that was definitely, spirit. That was definitely a, a message. It wasn't
Yeah.
random.
And I'll give you another one because this is how we interact with consciousness. So I have a friend who's an angel communicator, and she always gets feathers, like white feathers. And this is a sign that her angel's around. I never see feathers, like never
Mhm.
get them. That's just not my thing. And when I go walking with her, there's white feathers everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just like, okay, she is interacting with that, and that's her sign.
Right.
So she's manifesting and making it come into reality, which is interesting.
That is so interesting. And I know you talked about meditation in the book as well. You said something I really related with, I don't know where, if it was in the book, but at some point I heard you say that you've now taken up yoga. And I know, like you, I just couldn't get into yoga. I was like, if I'm not sweating, it's not productive. I don't like it. I get bored. And only sort of during, I think around last February when we were all housebound, I decided, I'm really going to do this. And what I found is that, well, I knew this already, but I really started to understand why spiritual people do it and what purpose it serves in terms of helping us be still. And it's a moving meditation. I'd love to hear too how what it's done for you spiritually and what it how you see yoga as sort of a tool or a supplement to being a spiritual person.
Yeah, so I'll be really honest. I have PTSD from a lot of things, and PTSD can hit you later. I'm a sexual assault survivor, so that came on really early, right after the sexual assault, which was after the near death experience. And then after a few more rear ends and car accidents, I had severe PTSD in cars. So just this fear of I don't want my body to get hurt again. That feeling. So I have a lot of anxiety and a lot of PTSD, and I've done so much work. I mean, I've gone to a therapist, rapid eye release treatment, healers. I've done so much work on myself that at some point I thought, well, maybe I was kind of stuck with some level of PTSD.
Yeah.
If I do yoga, hot yoga twice a day, finally, I think I'm chill. Like,
Yeah.
anxiety is gone. So if I meditate and do yoga and do like all these things, then I think I finally got a handle on anxiety, which is major. That's I've meditated for many, many years, and I'll go through, different phases with it where I feel, more peace. And then if I have a tough life experience and I feel like it's just decreasing my anxiety or my what I'm dealing with, it's not really setting me free spiritually. It's just kind of bringing me from high anxiety to low
Yeah.
anxiety, but I think adding yoga to these other things has really been finally an answer to some anxiety. And that's
Oh,
huge for
that's
me.
great. I actually have a friend who has PTSD and she said that for her meditation, she can't do it or and she's done a lot of um rapid eye movement kind of stuff and trauma therapy, but th- it's difficult for her to be still in that way because the trauma can, when you're too still, if you have PTSD, it can actually have the opposite effect of having your brain kind of go into that spiral. So it's really nice to hear that at some point there is the ability to be able to do that without having those symptoms, and that it actually is helpful is so nice to hear. I'm glad that it's working for you as well.
Yeah, it gives me hope too because I've spent a lot of time and money on integrative medicine and therapy and all kind of things that people can't do sometimes. I know not everyone can. I don't have kids, so I was able to allocate a lot of my resources to healing and to myself. And not everyone has that ability if they're stressed and struggling. But I think everyone can turn on a YouTube video and
Yeah.
really commit to a practice of meditation and yoga and really just add that to their lives, and over time anxiety will decrease.
Yeah, that's really great. And then another thing I wanted to touch on regarding, well, I want to talk a little bit more about your book because I can't plug it. Like, I really want to plug it enough. I mean, I can't plug it enough, is what I mean to say. Um, is First of all, I just want to kind of reiterate that this isn't just a story about a near death experience, although your near death experience is very vivid, which makes it very unique. I mean, there are a lot of people that have had it, but your average person won't have had a near death experience to the degree that you did, where you met angels or beings of light. You received very clear messages. You have a very vivid memory of that. But I was telling my friend about your book the other day, and I said it's kind of like the Eat, Pray, Love but for the person who can't afford to go to, Italy. I loved that book, but I said, not everyone can just kind of like run off to Thailand. And I said, but what I loved about it is it's this evolution of, I think it's so much of what you experience, trauma, even minus the trauma, is so relatable to all women, at least I can say, in terms of just the stuff we go through as women, and how we have relationships with men, and how we um, give up too much of ourselves, and we give too much of ourselves and let people kind of, not every woman, but a lot of us, I can relate with that feeling. So, um, and it really touched me just how you were able to turn so much of this stuff that happened to you that was very traumatic into such a beautiful, you just kind of taken it and used it, as I said, to change other people's lives and to be of service. And and I know you say some of this in your book, but for now, as a little teaser, what do you want people to know? What's the most important thing? I mean, obviously love, but in your words, what, having had this profound experience and connection with the other side, what would you want what is the most important thing for us all to know?
We go on, and spiritual learning is maybe the most important thing we can do while we're here because it prepares us for what's next and it informs this life in the most beautiful of ways. So I did not think that my spirit would go on, but now I know that that's my true reality. Like that's the perfection, like this is the struggle. Like being in the body is the okay, I'm running my marathon, I'm going to try to get that good time, or I'm going to try to give as much love. I'm going to fail sometimes, I'm going to get grumpy, like I'm not going to be perfect because I'm in this human body, and that's just life. But keep striving for that level of what would my soul do in this moment. And I think when you have to make big decisions, go, okay, what is best for my soul? What is best for that highest level? Because I believe time is kind of relative. And so now I see, my older self and my young self and myself at the end of my life sends back love and tells me, hey, this middle part's going to be okay. You can make it, you can do it, keep striving. And so I'd say connect with timelessness, whether it's meditation or yoga, connect with something that gets you out of the flow of time and into your spirit. And then remember, yeah, okay, it's cliche to say love is all that matters, but kindness matters
Mhm.
too. That's another way of saying it, that I never regretted being kind.
That's really beautiful. I love that. And then in terms of what services you offer, I know that you're a medium. Do you see clients regularly, or are you still kind of keeping it to, how much do you have the band, how much do you have the bandwidth for, and how often do you offer your mediumship services to the
Right now,
public?
yeah, right now I do have a calendar on my website, and I do about a reading a day during the week, and sometimes I get booked out, and sometimes there's cancellations. But yeah, I like to connect with one person a day. That's kind of my feeling right now. I still teach at a community college, so I actually have more time
Oh,
because we're
great.
online. In the past, I didn't have as much time for this because I was in the classroom all day, but online learning has certainly freed us up, in
Yeah.
time like this. So I don't know where it's all going. So about 5 years ago, I got a message from God, and it kind of scared me that my mission was complete. And my first thought was like, well, am I going to get a disease? Am I going
Right.
to die?
Is this it?
Are you just taking me out?
Why don't we just letting you cruise?
Yeah.
Like, just now just hang out and just have fun.
Yeah, so I've kept teaching, but I've also expanded out and written the book and connected with people more publicly. And I don't know sometimes where it's going. I just,
Yeah.
just having fun and just seeing where it goes. And then I think I'm more in touch with other people who are struggling for purpose now, because now I don't have a clear message. I know I can take things and go, I'm always meant to remind people of their light and their goodness and their potential. So whatever I'm doing, I want to do that through medium readings, through workshops, through helping other people write about their spiritual experiences. I recently did a workshop with that. I'm a creative writing professor, and to make it a specialty workshop was so much fun. This was, people like you and others who've had spiritual experiences and are developing and want to write about it. And oh my God, I loved supporting those students through that. That was a ton of fun. So I think I'll keep doing that and offer more of that.
That's fantastic, and you're doing it right now. I mean, just by even, um, I like a lot of my guests, I haven't had anyone say, "No, I don't wanna do." At first I said, "Well, I don't have that many followers yet, and I'm still growing," and every single one of them said, "I asked Spirit," and they were like, "Do it," "Do it," and it's because it's that one, hopefully, I'd like to grow this channel one day, I'd like it to be bigger than it is. But I also think that if there's that one person that gets the message that needed to hear that, you have done your job. I've heard musicians say that because I used to be a music booker, and maybe two people would show up and they'd still play enthusiastically, and I'd thank them and they'd say no, but if like those two people, if it touches them, and then they share my music with their friends, and that's the thing, is we're trying to spread the message that this is not all there is, and that we all have a greater purpose, and there's so much hope because this world is filled with horrible things and beautiful things, but it's really, there's so much more to it. And I think that's such an important message, which is why I'm so grateful that you are willing. If I thought, oh, she's probably so tired of telling telling this story like 500 times, but I think the beauty is that that by telling your story, there's someone new who didn't hear it, who hasn't heard it already.
Well, and these conversations, like you feel like a friend. It's so many times
Yeah.
when I interview someone or someone interviews me, there's like this real bonding
Yeah.
experience. And I'm so blessed by it. Like that's been a huge blessing now is everyone I know, who's on a spiritual path. Like I live in a moderately sized town in Texas, and I don't know that many people here
Yeah.
who are on a spiritual path. But because of these interviews, and I'm sure your life will start to unfold, and you'll meet more and more people across the country. And I wanted to say, there's so many people who don't tell you that they've listened to your podcast and they have been touched. So there's the few people who reach out, but there's lots of people who just were so depressed that they didn't even have the energy, but they felt a little better because they listened to something.
That's so true. And I'm here to tell you, I'm one of those people that watches YouTube stuff all the time. And I try to leave a comment, but it's true that people don't even know how much they've made an impact on you. And I that kind of brings us to your whole experience. And I know that you've made an impact on your students' lives, on the people you love, on strangers in the street, just by showing them a small kindness. You don't even know, though, how that day you brightened someone's day, and you did your mission as a soul on earth. And do you, I don't know if this is something you've thought about yet at all, but are you going to continue writing books? I mean, I know you said the publishing process, I'm sure, isn't the fun part, but in general, like whether it's about spiritual stuff or otherwise.
So yeah, about 15 years ago, when I was teaching at a junior high, I worked with some interesting junior high girls who they inspired me, and I started writing a young adult novel. And I've never come back to it and finished it, but I have some ideas about how to teach spirituality to younger people through a fiction book. And I think
Good
that that
idea.
would be a ton of fun to finish that book and to also write children's books. That's always been something. I think every spiritual person has some themes that just run through their head. And I've talked to countless people who have children's books just sitting in their drawers, and I do too, just waiting for, that right connection with the artist, or, just making it happen. But certainly I'd like to do that and just keep having fun out of just curiosity. I self-published some poetry books, and poetry is so hard in the United States to sell. Like
Yeah.
even when you go through the the big houses that publish it, you might get two or three copies. So it's kind of been nice to just put my book out there and just have fun with it. But
Oh, that's exciting. I have a niece who's just turned 13, and I hope that your book will come out, a book. I know that might be even it might be for younger kids too, but I'd love to kind of share a book like that with her. It's just a way of kind of opening their minds to, without pushing anything, just saying, this is just an interesting perspective that I think a
yeah,
lot of kids may not think about, because when you're young, everything seems so serious, and so you've got worries in school, and kids at school that are mean to you, and all this stuff is happening, and so many of us don't even realize that you're okay. You're actually okay. You're
yeah.
going to be great.
You can say things in fiction too that, writing a memoir, that I had to write one because of the near death experience. And, there was publicity around it. And I was like, okay, then I'll tell my story, but I'll tell it the way I want to tell it. But when you write fiction, I think you can connect with people in a different way, which is really helpful because there isn't any judgment on their part about who you are. You've created a fictional character, so you can love and hate
Yeah.
the character. You can learn from the character. You can laugh at the character, and the character can just stay with you. So I think of books like Lucky was a book that a writer wrote about her sexual assault, but then she wrote The Lovely Bones, and this is Alison
I love
Siebel.
that book.
No one knows about Lucky, but that was her
No, I
memoir.
didn't.
It didn't do that well. But the fictional book, she used like, what if she had been murdered? And that's what she kind
Oh,
of used
wow.
to write that book. So she used so I certainly will use everything that I've been through,
Yep.
in the creation of characters, but make it different, in a way that people can maybe connect to without so much judgment around politics or
Yeah.
gender or religion or like there's so much that you can get attacked for when you talk about spirituality. That's
I
it's
know.
it's been a journey.
I know, I understand. But I'm at that point where I'm I'm becoming more spiritual. I just started to back away and go, I can't, all the stuff that's going on now. And actually, I'm kind of going to end on that, because I've talked about this in some of my other interviews, but you start to realize, like, it's understandable that in our human form, we're all going to have different opinions and different perspectives. And this is how I think the government should be run. And this is how I think, and you're wrong. And at the end of the day, I kind of had to pull back and say, but I'm I'm not this, I'm not that. I'm a soul. We're all just souls. We don't have to, I mean, yeah, there are important issues that we need to, address and stand up for things that are important to us, but at the same time, like, this is all just a game. And I would love to hear your perspective on I've asked several of my guests this, but I really, from a spiritual perspective, in light of all the chaos that's been going on, that I do feel like it's kind of calming down. Um, what do you see sort of either the
Mm.
purpose of it all is, or what I think I'm having trouble formulating my question, but what is it all about, and what has been going on? And
We're evolving as a culture, and more people are having spiritual experiences, and I'm very excited about that. So when I look at 95, 94, 95, when I was first kind of on the scene with
yeah,
all of that, there weren't a lot of people my age who were talking about these things. I felt alone. And so I kind of threw myself into my career. I felt like baby boomers, many of them were waking up and, I could talk with people my parents' age, but now I look at all these younger people who are having spiritual experiences and awakening. I think that that's more important than anything that's going on. I think the veil has thinned a bit during the pandemic, and that there's more and more awakenings, and that human beings are just evolving, and there's going to be a clash between certain ideas, but there's also a realm kind of above it. Like we're trying to pull, I think, both sides up to this place above that, where they really do just feel a oneness with everyone, where it's just commonplace to take care of everyone, to want the best for everyone,
Mhm.
to literally in your heart want the best for all of humanity, those in your vicinity, those in your country, those around the world. And that's a higher perspective in the
Mhm.
midst of a lot of things that are a mess,
Yeah.
that can be challenging for people to realize, like, that's where we're going. It's a place above, and it's a place kind of above religion too. It's a place of love for all, which that causes a lot of chaos with traditionalists. There's going to
Yeah.
be a lot of pushback around that, but you don't have to lose the beauty of your religion. You just have to gain uh, an appreciation for everyone doing well and everyone winning.
Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful place to end. Thank you so much for doing this interview. It's been wonderful to connect. Again, I'm going to post all your links below, but I'm going to say it again. Angels in the OR is one of the best spiritual books I have read, and I've read a lot of them. It's so you are a very talented, beautiful writer. I'm very picky about writing, and I can say that this book is so well written and so subtle, and it's just beautiful and so relatable, at least to me. And so I wish you all the best, and uh, tell us your website. It will be at the bottom, but just so people can make a note of it.
Yeah, it's Tricia, Tricia Barker, Barker, MDE, has a near-death experience.com. But thank you. This has been
Fantastic.
a wonderful show, and I love the energy that you center and your message. So thank you for having me as a guest.
My absolute pleasure. We'll be in touch. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.